Hey everyone, welcome back to Page Chewing with my esteemed partner Taylor from ADP Between the Pages. And today we have two absolutely spectacular guests, two gentlemen that we love. So awesome to see. We haven't chatted to them in quite some time, which is a travesty, but we're rectifying that today. So we have the amazing brothers Gwynne and Will. How you doing, gents?
We're all good. We're all good. Thank you for having us. We had such an awesome chat with awesome time with our chat the other year, and so we're back. So cannot wait.
Thank you for having us. Thanks for letting us come
It's
and
an
crash.
Thanks so much for coming. Taylor, how you been? You and I haven't spoken in a while either.
Yeah, no, there was an across the world move in between everything. So thank you to everyone who's watching for being so flexible with working with Page Chewing. We're not as frequent as we would like to be, but there is genuinely no better way to be back than talking to these two. So I think it was, what was it, 2 years ago that we actually talked? I think it was a hot minute.
Was it 2? I
That
think it
is
was
crazy.
2, yeah. Because you were saying
Yeah.
1, I was thinking 2.
It feels like a couple weeks ago.
At least I will say, at least our thumbnail game's gotten better in the last 2 years. But truly delighted to have you guys.
No.
Yeah.
You mean your thumbnail game? I am absolutely hopeless with thumbnails. No, full disclosure, Taylor does all the thumbnails. I couldn't do a thumbnail to save my life, so she's the one that's got us covered in that regard. So.
Glad to be of service. Glad to be of service.
So we're talking about,
So delighted.
but that's amazing. But yeah, we're talking. Speaking of changes, so Ed and Will, wow, talk about changes to galore. So since we last spoke, Ed, you've become a papa, which is absolutely incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And Will, you've gone off to university.
I have, yeah. So big changes. I think Ed might have one-upped me slightly. Yeah, it's been a busy 2 years.
We're both progressing in the adulting world.
Yeah, it's
To
scary.
some degree, yeah.
Yeah.
It is scary, is it?
Yeah, we're close to being adults, not quite.
Maybe
So
one day.
how have we, because as booktubers, we know, like Taylor just talked about the cross-world move, essentially, and everything that goes on in our lives. How have you two adapted? Because now a lot of times you're actually physically separate on one part of the UK versus the other. How have you managed to keep things going?
Well,
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Like the train that kind of has derailed, but it is still enough momentum to
carried
keep
on.
going.
Yeah, so the first years at uni, I think I was a bit naive. I thought, you know what, I can do all the uni reading plus reading for the channel, my normal reading, and it'll just be great. It'll be perfect. It'll work really well. Then I realised I
with that
no
delusion.
time.
Just saying.
Yeah, I know. I was swiftly delusioned from that. So at first we had a few months where we didn't actually do anything. Adapting to that, you being a father, me going to uni. I'm not sure which one's harder, but this last year, because I've just finished my second year, I think we've done a bit better, haven't we?
We've been kind of batch recording whenever William is back, but he's a very popular young man, and he's very hard to kind of pin down when he is actually back down in Sussex. So
it's like a crazy schedule when I'm back. We're like, okay, we'll meet up, we'll record this day for 3 hours, then the next day, and then we probably won't record for a month or two. But because we've done that batch recording, that can go out anytime. But people sometimes get a bit confused when we say, oh, yeah, The Devils came out yesterday, and then they're like, no, that came out 3 months ago. We're like, oh, yeah. Well, we did record it the day after.
Yeah, but I mean, you've done a couple of videos on your own. We've tried to adapt in that way. I do a little bit on my own, or my fiance Sadie, she will join in as well sometimes and tell us about Avatar, I'm sure, and all stuff like that. So yeah, no, it's good.
Yeah, we've loved seeing some of those, especially with Sadie and ours. Like, those have been just a real treat to see your lovely family. And and Will, you reminded me. And Will, you also have your own channel now, kind of branching off.
We don't talk about that.
The Brothers Gwynne is always the main focus, but yeah, I've got some videos of my own channel as well.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean,
Busy.
it's hard enough to maintain your own channel. I can't imagine coordinating schedules. So batch filming is, something that all of us kind of do. But what's interesting is we all try to kind of hide that we do it a lot of the time. I find as recorders, like I find myself changing my shirt to make it look like I haven't recorded in the same day. I don't know if you guys have felt some kind of unexpected shame is a very strong word. That's not the word I'm looking for here, but unexpected things to navigate through batch filming? Or do you just find that you're like, yeah, well, if I recorded it earlier, people will deal with it? Or have you tried to finesse a little bit with your batch recording?
Ed does love to change an outfit between the video.
I love clothes. I always want to show off something. I don't look like I love clothes because I'm just in a t-shirt at the moment. But
whereas I'm the editor, so I think if something's really dated, I'm happy to just kind of add a note saying we did record this a few months ago. Yeah. So I think I'm not as fussed on that side. I'll sit in the same outfit, do 6 videos. But so people probably just think that I wear the same thing every single week, whereas because Ed's changing. So they're like, why is Ed changing?
It is interesting though, because you do feel like you need to be very current, very up to date, and like anything you mention needs to be, relevant to whenever someone's watching the video. But I watch plenty of videos on YouTube from like 3-4 years ago. Like, it doesn't matter really when it is. As someone who consumes content, I don't care when I'm watching someone who recorded a video a few months ago, even, especially when it's like a review of a book that I've just read. I'm like, okay, I want to go see what this person thinks, But as a creator, you do kind of think, right, I need to be a bit more relevant, and try and be careful about what you say. But maybe it's just better just to be like, this was recorded a while ago.
I suppose something that's helped. Something that's helped is we've never kind of decided to do videos just because what will get more views and stuff like that. We've kept to what we enjoy talking about. It's like famously reviews don't actually do that well, but we love to do one. If we both love a book, then we will do a review on that. So I suppose
we're going to talk about it anyway, so we might as well do it with the camera. So a couple of other people can lend us their opinions as well. So
we got to get some hot takes though from you two, because I'm not sure. I mean, I love you guys, but I'm wondering if we need to revoke your fantasy card, because I understand that historical fiction is kind of creeping up and taking over as perhaps your preferred reading genres. Is that true? Am I overestimating it, underestimating what's going on there?
I'd say at the moment I'm probably reading more historical fiction, but let's just say instead of taking over, it's a bit of a comeback, because from probably the last 5 years until about 2 years ago, I basically only read fantasy. And so let's just say that, the historical fiction wants a bit more respect. It's having a bit of a comeback. And then when it evens out, we'll have an even distribution, maybe.
I feel like fantasy and historical fiction are kind of from the same family, So it might be allowed. I do find there's a lot of crossover. If you like, I think particularly your series PL feels very much like historical fiction at times as well, and because how grounded and real it is as well. So, but lately I will admit I've been reading a lot more historical fiction. There's so many books out there that we have to read, so we have to balance genre, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Somehow.
Often historical fiction, they're great palate cleansers as well, because even if it's a series, they're usually self-contained stories within each book, and then a lot of standalones as well, which is quite nice, especially when I'm at uni. I don't really want to commit to huge series. Although saying that, I've started Malazan and the Greenbone Saga, and I'm rereading Rome with the Elderly.
You did not.
I did. I was pressured into it, and I'm loving it.
Wow. Those are huge undertakings. So Taylor is completely responsible for me and Greenbone Saga, and also some of my favorite Dandelion Dynasty. Those are both recs that, because of Taylor, I got into and loved. Now, Taylor, you haven't tackled Malazan yet. I know
I haven't. I mean, the peer pressure is loud, so I think it's not too far in the future.
Terrifying to dive into, though, isn't it? Because there's just there's so much to actually get into, and you do, like you do talk to a lot of Malazan fans who are like, guys, it gets really good at book 6, and that's kind of not really what you want to hear, is it? But as someone who just dived into it, it gets good at book 1. So don't worry about that.
It's good at book 1. Okay, I'll take it.
It's scary when people say, "Look, just read 3,000 pages, then it gets good."
And then it's good, and then it starts to click, right?
But we both enjoyed Gardens of the Moon.
Yeah, we did.
But it is. Sorry, go ahead, Taylor.
Oh, I'm just saying it's not necessarily the length. It's just kind of become this. What's the word I'm looking for? It's just part of the zeitgeist. It's got its own culture around it, and I'm just not ready to tackle it yet. But I did want to give you all a chance before we move on from the idea of historical fiction, knowing that that's kind of taking over your channel a little bit, but knowing that you also have a cross section of fantasy fans, kind of where you started, Papa Gwynne, you're straddling both worlds. So I wanted to say, like, what is your pitch to a fantasy fan, why they should get into historical fiction? Because every time I talk to you guys, you make me want to read it, right? So if someone's listening and they haven't jumped in yet, what's your pitch? Is it that there's standalones? Is it that there's like what would you say to someone? Get them to try to read it.
Well, I'd say for me, one of the main things about reading is relatability, being able to identify with the characters, even if you don't like them, to still understand why they're doing certain things. So imagine historical fiction is basically fantasy without the dragons. And then often there'll be not kind of page by page exactly what happened in real life, but inspired by real figures, and that can in itself be inspiring or shocking. I think it really teaches you a lot about the world, the past, things that are very important to us. And I love fantasy. I absolutely adore it, but I really like that balance of jumping between the two. And then also I find it really interesting when I return to fantasy and I say, oh, maybe that was inspired by this historical period or this historical book that maybe could have been even better with a fantasy element, and then exploring that idea.
Pitch, Will. I might
try. Thank you.
Can't
put me on the spot there.
Nice.
So if you'll forgive my just summarizing, the idea is it being in conversation with the fantasy worlds that we love and we know. That's just a net positive to your reading experience. Is that a fair summary? That kind of in conversation idea?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm fascinated at part of my degree, so I'm studying English and history. So joint honours, and I love that idea of looking at the ways of where life is so alien to us and very different from what we know now, but then also what stayed the same, kind of the timeless themes, what motivates people, love, revenge, anger, those things that really identify people throughout periods of history.
Yeah, I think, even with reading fantasy, I'm always looking to find things that feel human, feel things that kind of inspire me, or even as a history buff, the things that help me learn. There's nothing I love more than reading a book about ancient Greece and then wanting just to go and read non-fiction about it, or, watch a video or watch a film and try and learn more about that period and that culture. And I think I'm really attached to experiencing different cultures and seeing different historical periods, how they play out, and seeing the humanity within that. There is also an element that me and Will do love to read kind of dark books as well, because I think you find rays of hope in there, hopefully anyway. And there's nothing darker than some periods of history. And I think it kind of has a certain gravitas to it, thinking this is inspired by real life. But I just read a book called You Dreamed of Empires, which is about it's historical fiction, supposedly, and it's about Hernan Cortez entering Tenochtitlan, the Aztec city, and seeing how it plays out as history. And then the further you read it, there's kind of this magical realism element to it. So there's elements of fantasy that are layered within it, and it just feels kind of otherworldly, but also familiar, which is quite an interesting feeling, and that's something that I love to read.
I was going to say you can get the best of both worlds and go for historical fantasy.
Hey,
what a win there!
Very nice.
I mean,
Will.
a series like Ghoul's Song by Shauna Lawless, we've absolutely adored. Real world set in late 10th century Ireland, and then it's got Irish mythology in there as well. And then even kind of out and out historical fiction series like the Boudica series by Amanda Scott, they feel fantastical as well, because it's exploring the culture, the beliefs of that time. And to the characters, it is real, and kind of there's this dreamlike sequence in quite a lot of the series, which a reader could take as fantastical. The same with the Warlord Chronicles. There's elements that they take as magical, and we might think, oh no, we might be skeptical and say it works like this, but to the characters, it feels magical, and that has an effect on the reader as well. And so you can just combine the two.
Yeah, because there's elements of belief and faith in real life, and when you have a historical fiction book that then has kind of magical and fantastical elements, that's real to those people that would have been in that period. That's incredibly real to them. That's what they believe in through and through to their very core. So I think when authors can successfully implement that, that's really exciting for me.
Absolutely. And you just, of course, those two of those series. I mean, World of Chronicles, one of my favorite fantasy series, historical fantasy series of all time. Coincidentally, and I want to get onto this topic in time, but doing a reread of that because I'm reading it with Philip Chase, who's reading for the first time. Philip has made this promise that he has to read it this year, or else he's deleting his channel. We don't want that to happen. So, exactly. So we're starting that. But for me, I've reread that series so many times. It hits me in all the feels. But I quickly want to mention as well, Gale Song, Sean Lawless, Fantastic Series. I have to read the final book in the trilogy, which I haven't, and the novellas. But what I wanted to ask was, so as I said, I'm rereading World of Chronicles. Myself, Philip Chase, Dr. Philip Chase, the esteemed Dr. Fantasy, who we all love, friend of the channel, is reading for the first time. I'm hoping and sure he's going to love it as much as I do. How do you find, now that time has gone on, you're both very experienced readers, what's the value of the reread? Because, there's always this push and pull, like read something new or go back to that comfort read when perhaps you're having a reading slump or you want to just, go back and find yourself immersed in that particular world. I'm sure you feel that way about many series, including Papa Gwynne's series. I know I've gone back to Faithful and Followed so many times as just that I just need to just hang out with Corbin again, and you know what I mean. It's just I do that often. How do you find that push and pull, tug of war between I have all these books on my TBR I want to read, but I just want to go back and read something that I love.
Yeah, I mean it is quite difficult because especially on BookTube, part of the amazing part of BookTube and the community is the amount of recommendations, the amount of books on the pile. Read this, read that. You want to join the love. You want to join the bandwagon and kind of soak in all the love for those books. And so you think, well, reread a book I've already read before. But I feel sometimes, especially if you've got a bit of a reading slump, I think returning to a favorite of yours can be just instrumental to reinvigorating your love at that moment. And then also in ways that one day, not yet, I would love to be a writer. And Ed, you've written a manuscript, and I think rereading your favorite series can remind you of why you love them, very specific aspects. Is it the character work, the dialogue, the prose, all these different storytelling aspects, which are why we love these stories when they come together. And I think that it can teach you a lot in that way, and then also remind you the best of the reading experience.
Nice answer, Will. You're pretty good
Yes.
at that. I think
it's almost like you make videos talking about this or something.
Not his own channel. I think do it with someone else.
Oh, just really.
I think rereads are the most important read of all, because even a book that you hate or you felt kind of lukewarm on, you can discover more about it. I read Gardens of the Moon years and years ago, and I was just like, I'm not really in the zone for this. And sometimes that a book isn't connecting with you, and you think, is it me? Is it the book? Is it the time? Is it the place I'm in at the moment? Is it where my headspace is at? And I recently returned to Gardens of the Moon, and it just like blew my socks off. And it was, and I finally understood. I definitely got the hype. I understood Stephen Erickson's style of writing. I understood what he was trying to layer with different characters, and I just felt this deep appreciation of it. And the fact that I was able to reread something and go from not really enjoying it to being like, this is one of my favorite books I've read. And I think that's really important. And, like you guys said as well, summed up perfectly, that you can experience, re-experience books you love. And you can find different things that you love about them, or you can kind of notice a different character. Or, if I watch Lord of the Rings now, I adored it as a child, but I can connect with it on a far more emotional level now with some experiences. As a parent, I can understand books or films that feature parents more than I could before as a parent. Rereading The Road by Cormac McCarthy is deeply traumatic for me now. Whereas before, I was just like, the prose is
it's traumatic already.
The world is very immersive. It was traumatic, yeah. But as a parent now, you can understand things that you wouldn't have been able to through experience. So I think rereading very important.
Yeah, well, the wonderful thing about reading is it's subjective. You don't just get a list of 100 books that you'll love and that's it. And so wherever you are in life, it will change how you receive a book.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I meant to mention is usually rereading really increases my respect for the author when you realise things that they set in motion.
Yes.
When you were ignorant, you had no idea what was going on, and you just didn't appreciate how good they are, how much time every author puts into their work. I don't think people will ever realise. And going back, rereading, seeing those things set in motion, those little Easter eggs, those little character details that mean so much more to you on a reread, I think can just be so rewarding.
Yeah, and sometimes, like, same with like TV shows and films, I might binge something. So you kind of, when you look back on your experience, it's all kind of a bubble. You know, you can't really identify things as clearly as if like you watched it episode by episode, week by week. I just read on holiday Buffalo Hunter, and I read it in 2 sittings, and now I want to go and read it again slowly to kind of re-experience everything, and you feel that excitement within you, don't you? Thinking, right, I know this is going to happen next, but you know how, like, really focus on how you're feeling. And also, I think it's important to listen to books as well, and you could listen to your favorite. I recently listened to Malice, and you know I've read Malice more times than I've had hot dinners, but being able to experience it through listening to it, and you get something different out of it. So I think you know you can always get something out of a reread. Yeah, it's really interesting subjects, and yeah, we should probably
have either of you reread a book or series lately?
See, this is something where I struggle because what's the word I'm looking for? I find that I have a competition with myself. It's not my audience particularly. I know my audience would enjoy me rereading, but I feel like I need to talk about something new, right? So I think actually having a Patreon is really helping me with that, because a lot of my patrons want to see me reread and talk about things. So I can kind of set myself on that path to reread more, because I know that there's a list of books that I can reread for the comfort, for the, like you said, looking at the writing in a different way, revisiting it at a different point in my life and seeing how I react to it, right? So there's so many reasons to reread, but I struggle with it. My most recent reread was I reread the Stormlight Archive in anticipation for book 5. Did I read book 5? No, but I got 2 book 5 and I reread them. So there's that. But I had a great time rereading those, and it reminded me why I love them. I did it via audiobook this second time around, and the first time was all physical, and I got swept up in the world, and I was just in Roshar for probably a month. So that was a fantastic experience. So I need to reread more. I know that's something I need to work on, but I don't know about.
Well, I you know, on this shelf, I have 2 shelves, but the shelves behind me, you can see, you know, a lot of what I consider like the Big Ten. Amongst them, of course, you know, John Gwynne, Bernard Cornwell, George R. Martin. You can see Jenny Wirtz, Christian Cameron, Stephen Erickson. You can see some of, you know, my faves out there, right? So those are my go-tos essentially for rereads. It's rare that I've reread a book that is not from my faves, which is, I think, a flaw. And it's funny, this is something I'll admit too, is that because I have to, because I'm writing this series, I hate rereading my own work. I do it all the time because I have to for continuity and all kinds of things. And yeah, you have those moments where, oh, you know, I wrote that. That's not bad. But there's ones like, oh, you know, that could have been written so better. I made a mistake here. And so I feel like I cringe when I think, oh, is someone rereading my work right now and finding out how terrible I am as an author? But, you know, I think that for me, it's definitely going back to those faves. And I think what they do for me, besides just the pure comfort and just the nostalgia, and they really inspire me to be better, to hone my craft, to be a better writer. I think when I read, I mean, I can take all of my those big authors, like obviously Jenny Wirtz is the prose. I don't quite understand how someone is able to work and manipulate adjectives, especially like that. It's just beyond me, right? The level of skill that she has with that, right? For obviously Papa Gwynne, it's the emotions. He just absolutely ruins and devastates you. How it makes you care for these characters. I mean, it's like a family member, right? One of them passed away, or it's like a family member passed. It's just I don't know how he does that. Bernard Cornwell, I think it's the authenticity with which he writes, especially battle scenes, right? And a lot of those authors write great battle scenes, but he makes you feel as if you're there. He makes you feel the heft of history, of what's riding on this confrontation. George R. R. Martin, obviously, it's just so it's so dark and gritty and realistic, and just he just makes you realize that the good guys don't always win. And so and he it again, I think he has an authenticity there. Steve Erickson, Malazan, I think it's scope of his world. So when I reread his stuff, anytime I fool myself into thinking, I have decent world building, then I read Malazan and I'm like, no, I'm not in that class. And then someone like Christian Cameron, you talk about authenticity with he gives you every detail, again, with especially it has that historical fiction feel, his fancy, and he writes fantastic historical fiction, Christian Miles Cameron. But yeah, again, you feel like you're there. So yeah, there's something for all of my favorite authors, those rereads that I go back to that I just I love.
So quite a few authors like Jan Abercrombie say that when they're actually writing, they really struggle to read fantasy because they feel like it influences them in a way where they need to keep their own voice. So like they'll read historical fiction or non-fiction. Do you feel the same, or do you feel like you're able to distance yourself?
Well, when I think I have no problem reading other authors' work when I'm writing. I don't feel like I'm sucked into their voice necessarily. But what I do feel though is that I could probably only reread certain types of authors who have somewhat, I feel, similar type writing or prose. So a Jenny Wirtz, a Bernard Cornwell, a Christian Cameron, a George R. R. Martin, a John Gwynne. I think if I read something totally like out of my element, like I don't know, Gideon the Ninth, or something that was more not the type of it's not similar in terms of being translated to what I write, like my style of writing. I think that would be tougher. So when I'm writing, I tend to read those, like I said, those authors.
And that's what I think you find on a reread as well. You can find like, okay, I really appreciate this scene, how Steven Erikson wrote this character, and then if you want to be a writer, especially, it's really helpful to really kind of understand how he did it. Although probably it's very hard for anyone to understand how Steven Erikson does something because it's just so crazy. But I think it's really important to know your authors and know your favorites. And me and Will also talk about that. I think there's a difference between like what are the best books you've read and what are your favorites, kind of like your literary. And we really want to do a video on like comparing, what are the 10 best books I've read, and what are my 10 favorites, and seeing how different they would be and why. Because some books speak to you on an emotional level, but you might not say that they were the best. It's the best literary example of that. So it's all about.
Or they're important to you in different ways. Like I recently read The Tainted Cup, A Drop of Corruption, and I really enjoyed them, but then also they had an impact kind of more than the reading experience. They're so creative. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people are saying they get fancy burnout, and I just thought this is a clear message that there is so much more to explore in fantasy, and it will basically never end what you can explore. It's so unique, so creative, and I think anyone having fancy burnout should pick up books like that and realize you're wrong. Fantasy will always be interesting.
You're just burned out of this particular type of fantasy, is what you're saying, not fantasy as a whole. Yeah. I mean, when it comes to Robert Jackson Bennett, I loved Foundry Side by him. Also exceptionally different and exploring, pushing boundaries that we usually don't see. Yeah. I've been wanting to read The Tainted Cup forever, so that's another reason to get
funny
to it.
because I don't really like the whole mystery Sherlock Holmes style stuff. I don't really like watching. But when William talks about The Tainted Cup, like, it makes me want to read it. So
it is dangerous doing videos together because I've got my TBR sorted. I've sat down, and then Ed just starts talking about a book. I'm like, great, I'm gonna have to pick it up, aren't I? So later, You Dreamed of Empires, which you were just talking about earlier.
I'm terrified whenever you go to read something that I've recommended, because do you ever feel that fear that when you've told someone about something great, whether it's TV, book, film, and then they're like, okay, I'll watch it or I'll read it, and then I'm like, oh no, but
oh no, you're actually going to do it
life this week, and then I'll be just very incredibly upset. So yeah, I do get scared, and William's quite a harsh critic. You?
Well, I'd actually say I'm quite easily pleased, but then it's quite hard for me to adore something. It's kind of a big difference for me in that way, and so maybe that's the part you want me to say. This is my favorite read of all time.
Yeah, I want you to adore it.
I do want to pull up some comments in a second, but before we move on from this topic particularly, I did want to ask, creating videos with someone else is a very unique kind of dynamic that you all have going on. And there is that fear that when you recommend something to someone, they're not actually going to like it. And I feel that, you recently did a video, the books you've recommended to each other, right? And that was a really good video. I thoroughly enjoyed that. But the way that you guys were able to navigate saying like, yeah, it wasn't my favorite to that person's face is a skill that you develop, right? So I'm wondering that, do you find that over the years you've been on here, what is it, 4 years now, I think, right? So over the years you've been on here, have you found that you've developed naturally that skill of being able to say, I understand that you love this thing, but it's not for me. Like finding a way to express that.
From my side, definitely. I'll look at Ed and I can tell if I say the wrong thing right now, he's going to hold it against me.
I'm the toddler here, and I will have a tantrum. Yeah.
I'll say, can you pass me my water? And he say, well, you didn't enjoy
the
this
heroes.
book, so
you don't
hand it over.
I don't love the heroes as much.
So you can starve.
Exactly.
Yeah, no water for you.
But I think we are quite attuned to each other, what to say in a way that's honest, but not harmful.
Yeah, and I think I can I can joke about like the Silmarillion. It's not as bad as I say it is. There's still a lot to like about it.
I love the Silmarillion.
I can exaggerate it.
It's a history. It's a list.
It's a family tree. It's a really nice family tree, but it's a family tree.
But also, I think we're quite lucky. We actually do understand, for the most part, what the other brother will enjoy reading.
Yeah.
And we can understand what makes the other person tick.
Yes. Yeah.
That helps to avoid a lot of discussions on the negative side.
It has taken us a while to get there, and we still have disputes.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're heated disputes.
Yeah.
Other times they're not. So
I keep Sting out of reach during those times.
Outside of swinging range. Yeah, you had asked, have we had that experience, of someone not liking something. My best friend is into reading, but she's like a thriller kind of person. And she asked me, what's some of your favorite books that you think I could read? And I recommended Piranesi, and she DNF'd it in like the first 2 chapters. And I was like, oh, I don't usually get hit. Like I have a pretty thick skin, but that pushed it.
Now you know,
that pushed it. Exactly. So I think we've all kind of had that moment where we have to check ourselves and realize, all right, it's subjective,
Yeah,
so.
Like you, Papa Gwynne have been binging a lot of films lately.
Yeah.
And they're films that maybe me and Papa Gwynne absolutely love. And then you have been quite critical about some of them. And I just don't understand it sometimes. But I'm trying to mature. I'm trying to grow as a person, so I can see your perspective sometimes.
Yeah. Every once in a while, you're allowed to be right?
I must say, and this is, I'm not just saying this because you're here. I think the one fantasy series that when I recommend it, the the vast majority of people say this is great. That seems to have this cross thread of appeal is Faithful in the Fallen. That I've had some recs that have been hits or misses, but when I recommend Papa Gwynne, specifically that series, people are like, oh yeah, no, this was good. This was good. And I think again it goes back to having so many lovable characters that people just adore and that can't get enough of. I think that appeal. It has that mass appeal. But I do want to say that, I mean, how have you felt now to see after all of that to see Bloodsworn almost eclipse the two earlier series in terms of popularity for Papa Gwynne. And of course, what Miles came out 12, 13 years ago. You folks were teenagers then, right? So, but now you've seen his work evolve, and now he's this new series has just absolutely blown up. Like, how do you feel about all that?
Well, first of all, we'll get Papa Gwynne to pay you later. But it's lovely to see just all the Papa Gwynne love, and in a way I understand, because the Bloodsworn, I think from a writing perspective, I think Papa Gwynne would say as well, he feels like a better writer than he was with The Faith in the Fallen. I think what helps is they're very different. Obviously, Faith in the Fallen, huge cast of characters.
Yeah.
I mean, set yourself a hard challenge for a first book. It's crazy how he balanced so many. And I think you actually read the first manuscript when I was way too young to even read, and there was almost double the characters.
Yeah,
and so
they had very Welsh names. The names are still very Old Welsh, but even back then they were very long. And it's interesting because sometimes me and Papa Gwynne still call some of the characters by the old names. Like Gar was Adhelgar, and the spelling was pretty rogue. So and sometimes you kind of slip into that. But yeah, it's really interesting seeing how different the series are. I mean, I consider The Faith in the Fallen of Blood and Bone to kind of be one series, of the Banished Lands, and you've got the Bloodsworn. It kind of feels like The Devils by Joe Abercrombie, where it's his newest book in a new series, but it still has the staples of Joe's writing. And I think the Bloodsworn still has a lot of that stuff that people love in The Faith in the Fallen. And it's just a bit darker, and it you can kind of recommend either of them, I think, but depending on someone's tastes. I know that a lot of people say Malice is quite slow and hard to get into because of kind of the high POV count. But, to me, I think it's very fast paced, but it's kind of, maybe that's different because I've read it 500 times.
Yeah. But I also think there's a sentimentality for us for The Faith in the Fallen. Papa Gwynne started writing Malice a week after I was born. Took him about 10 years to write Malice. And then so from the beginning of Faith in the Fallen to when Wrath was finished was 14 or 15 years. And so during those years, we talked about the characters at the dinner table, and it was like they're real, which made those nasty moments even more painful and cruel, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so there's a sentimentality there where, like, Corban is like a friend of ours, as you were saying earlier. And so that's a bit different, obviously, with the Bloodsworn. Obviously, not as long a period of those characters, but characters like Orca, I think, are just as vivid and just incredible. But yeah, Corban, Storm, and characters like that have an extra sentimentality.
It's really surreal for us to see kind of how quickly Shadow of the Gods blew up. Like, I mean, I think it started off because of the cover.
I was going to say that.
It's hard for an author to move away from a world that they've already got some fans, who love that world, and I think it takes quite a big move. It can be a kind of a lose-lose, can't it? If you start a new series and it doesn't do really well straight away, because those people who love the old world, a bit like Joe again, people love the first law. People were a bit upset he moved away from it with the Devils, but then if you can discover love in that new series, then that's great. But I definitely think the cover was a big part of why it attracted people in it. And then I think a lot of people connected with Orca. A lot of people love. Vikings and The Last Kingdom, those TV shows, and they love that culture. And there's not that much fantasy that blends cultures like that. So I think on the nose, there's a lot of fantasy that's inspired by historical cultures, but there's not many that kind of like drip with it. It does feel like reading a saga. I think so. I think, and again, it's got Papa Gwynne staples of some interesting animal companions, and you've got found family, some similar tropes used, but used at a different aspect of it, perhaps, or a different angle. So, but yeah, we love them all,
and we're not biased.
Yeah.
Speaking of wanting to read something, now that I'm a mom, I want to reread it read Orca's perspective again, because I loved it already, but I know the mama bear in me is going to connect to that so strongly. So I think that the character work is consistent, throughout anything. When someone has that basis to their writing, I think that readers can attach to that no matter what the setting is, right? If they're willing to give it a chance, right? But it is interesting hearing your perspective on the difference between the two, because everyone that I talk to seems to have one that's like, this is my main one, from this person. And it's not just Papa Gwynne. I think people have that for all different authors, going back to the subjectivity of reading, right?
Definitely. So. And again, it's like sometimes where you read it, where you were in your life when you first read it, Faith in the Fallen. It's got that kind of emotional value to it, I think, when you're growing with these characters. It's a longer series as well. And The Bloodsworn is far more, I think, to the point, far more direct of the storytelling. Yes. But, Papa Gwynne, it's really fascinating hearing him talk about all of the series, because he learned so much from doing, different things with each. And as an author, I'm sure you agree, PL, that you kind of use a lot of your ideas that you've had for a long time in your writing, and then with each book you're trying to think about how can you do something differently, how can you approach something slightly different. You might have had an idea and you might think, oh damn it, I used it in book 1, I can't do this in book 5, where it would have been perfect now. But you kind of it's about balancing your the things that you include in your writing, and maybe thinking I'm going to use this further down the line, it's not quite ready yet.
Yeah, Papa Gwynne said that there's a lot in the Faith in the Fallen that he was just so excited and honoured to have the chance to kind of, when he was signed, to basically throw everything he's ever wanted to write about into it. Yeah, and he said he wished he held a few back for other series that would have been perfect. So one of the things that's changed is he said he has to be a bit more disciplined. He writes down all his ideas and he's like, is this perfect for the story? And if not, I'll use it in the future.
Yeah, because the end of Wrath is just so crazy, and it has it has kind of everything that you would imagine in the world, And
so sometimes he's like, "Damn it, I've already done it."
It's too much. Yeah.
I think it's definitely. I feel like, I know for me, because I'm writing a long series, because I'm writing a 7-book series. I think I get a kick out of when I can. Like I said, I don't particularly like to reread my books. I have to, but when I can feel like, this book does feel, self-contained, autonomous. It's different. It has a different vibe from the books preceding it or following it. I strive for that, and I do think that, and someone like Taylor, who's read almost all my books, can probably tell you that's something that I think I strive for, and that I'm really if I'm succeeding, then that's one of the things that I see as a big achievement when like you said, when a writer's able to do that. So yeah, I am definitely striving for that. That's why I'm having so much fun writing my current book 6, because it's so out there from the rest of like, people would say, oh, book 5 is a big departure, but I think they'll find book 6 is even more out there. So yeah, I'm enjoying that aspect of writing. So yeah, but that is something I strive for. That is something I definitely strive for. So
yeah. Before we move forward, I did want to come up with some of these comments that we had. I mean, this was ages ago, so I'm not sure if Talking Story is here. I'm sorry it took so long to get to you, but we're having fun here. All right. But just popping in to say hi to the Amazing Brothers. And I think that's supposed to say PL.
Yeah, that's their nickname for me, Papa Love. That's and I have to say quick, again, big happy birthday to Jacob Minton. Happy birthday, buddy. May you have returns.
What a great team.
Yes. Another fantastic guest we've had on here too. This was actually a question, which is, have you randomly found fantasy books with events inspired by real historical stories? So if we go back to the cross-section between fantasy and historical fiction or fantasy, take your pick. But have you had this experience before where you kind of have an epiphany while you're reading?
I'm going to peruse my bookshelves whilst.
I've got a couple of answers. So there is David Gemmell's The Regante, which is one of my favourite series. I think if you love Faith in the Fallen, then you will get a lot out of Regante, which is it's very much inspired by the Roman invasion of Britain. So you Celtic tribes, the Iceni, a lot of the other Celtic tribes in Britain, and then you've got versus the Romans. Now, some of that is changed, but in the Regante, it's very similar to that. With you've got these kind of Iron Age peoples being invaded by the Stone people, who are essentially the Romans, and I love seeing that reference and seeing how also the Regante culture is very similar to a lot of cultural elements of the Iceni tribe, Boudicca's tribe, which I absolutely love that. We recently read C.L. Clarke's series, and that is very much inspired by a historical period, isn't it? It's is it the French in Africa, I believe, which is really, really interesting. And yeah, she's a great writer, and she was great to talk to. We were lucky enough to interview C.L. Clarke and Papa Gwynne at one of our Waterstones places. Really, really cool. We've done a couple of interviews now, like in the flesh, which was quite terrifying. But no, that was good fun. But she's just so interesting in seeing how she blended details with with the fantasy world. Was fantastic to hear about. So
and those biceps.
Yeah, she could carry any Warhammer, absolutely. But I think both those two series are very much inspired by real history. Of course, you've got George R. Martin's Game of Thrones, lots of historical elements there. I recently watched, because I've been in a George R. Martin mood, that I'm going to be reading the whole series in September. So that's my goal. And I've been watching a lot of his interviews just to kind of get myself hyped up for it. And I watched him talking to Dan Jones, who's one of our favourite non-fiction writers and fiction writers, and listening to them two chat about Wars of the Roses and historical influence was great. And it's interesting seeing how a fantasy writer can be inspired by events and not kind of directly copy it, kind of put their own spin on it, suit the storytelling. And I think that's quite disciplined, thinking I'm going to use this, but I'm going to do it slightly different.
But then that's also, in my mind, what makes fantasy so incredible. My pitches to, obviously, there's still a bit of snobbery around fantasy. And I say, well, it's literally every other genre plus everything in your imagination. And that makes fantasy so incredible. There are no limitations. Yeah. And so you can take every historical event in history and then twist it around and then adapt it to your own story instead of being constrained by the real world.
I mean, like Bernard Cornwell says, he's inspired by history, but he's not pinned down by it. If he needs to invent a new country or a new city or a new character, then if it's going to service the story, then do it. It's not a non-fiction book, which as someone who loves history was at one point in my life was hard for me to understand. But the older I get and the more I get into writing as well, if something serves the story, then do it.
Something, it's a slightly different answer from what this question is, but it's adjacent, is someone that I enjoy with his alternative history exploration is P. Jelly Clark. I love his work. He is inspired by history, but he will pick a point in history and change it and then write the story after that change has occurred. And you as a reader start to realize this event must have been different, right? That is fantastic. And I love interacting with his works in that way. So, in his main work, which is Master of Jinn, right? A lot of his books are in that world. Cairo is a world power. Okay. Because of history went differently, and you start to piece together what went different, right? That I love that piecemeal thing. I'm sorry, my dog.
Hey, Samari.
Beautiful.
Joining in on the book talk.
Yeah. What's your favorite?
She is. What's her favorite book right now? Elmo's Color Book. It's her favorite. She's a big fan of Elmo.
We'll add that to the TBR.
Big fan of Elmo. So.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Please do.
Have you read Ring Shout?
Yes, I have read
Yes,
Ring
by
Shout. Yeah.
PJ Clark.
Yeah, brilliant, and taking
Shout,
the
yes.
the KKK and making them the monster.
Yeah,
You know, the cosmic horror. You know, yeah, I thought that was brilliant. That was so well done. Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic.
We
book.
recently watched Sinners and became
Oh,
obsessed with Sinners,
oh,
which, you know,
oh.
toys with the idea, and it's just so good. Taylor, have you seen Sinners yet?
Oh,
I have not.
Taylor.
No, but I've
I
heard
was
Taylor.
I should.
obsessed. I
Yeah.
mean, I should have been revising for my exams, and I probably watched about 300 videos on it. We watched it at the cinema 3 times, and
I was on
just-
my personal TikTok account, just like scrolling through, and I saw someone, you know, a video that had probably like 1 million likes, you know, talking about Sinners, and I looked at the comments, and William's comment was up there, and you were getting so many likes, but like William was I
obsessed.
saw William's comments on every single video about Sinners. I was like, you've got to revise, like seriously, you've got to chill out. But yeah, no, that's great, and I love seeing this kind of magical realism, you know, alternate history also playing out in different media, you know, different mediums through, instead of just books, you know, it's coming into, you know, pop culture as well, which is exciting. I think, is it Robert Harris who does some alternate history ideas as well?
Yeah,
I think it might have been Fatherland or something like that, but it's a really interesting idea, and when an author uses it well, I think it's fantastic. Yeah.
The beauty of having, you know, I know obviously for me, Atlantis, right? You know, I try to stay true to the main elements of Plato's tale, but yet of course it's my spin, it's my version. I think I hopefully subvert a lot of the themes with that story. But I mean, it's just so fun to take something that, you know, and again, Atlantis is a fable, right? Although many people believe that Atlantis existed, it's a fable. But taking something like that and putting your own spin on it, I just think there's just so much you can do, right, with something like that, and it's just a lot of fun, frankly, as an author.
And also, no one else in the world could have written that version apart from you, because that's your spin on it, isn't it? So yeah, no, I love that.
Yeah, no, that feels fantastic. I do want to find out, though, for both of you, because I know Willis mentioned that he's looking to write, and Ed, it sounds like you've already written a manuscript. How is that coming along, your own writing?
Yeah, so it's taken me a long time. I've probably started about 4 or 5 projects. You know, I read a Christian Cameron book, tried my own medieval book, where I basically just copied the whole thing. And eventually I kind of figured out my passions. What do I want to see in a fantasy book? And I have finished my manuscript, and it's about 1,000 words. Finished in March.
Congratulations!
And William's read it. My fiance's read it. My future mother-in-law has read it as well. Papa Gwynne is about to read it. So, and once I figure out if he likes it, then we will see.
You'll have the feedback,
Hopefully, I can submit it. I mean, I'm not really against nepotism anymore. Really.
Papa Gwynne's my dad. Here, read my book.
I've always said as a joke, and now I'm nearly there, that I could put on my book Edward in really small writing, and then John Gwynne in huge writing. And that's exciting.
Bigger than the title, right?
What I love is R.F. Kuang's career, how she's, you know, she wrote in a fantasy world, and then she's done standalones. My personality is very, I flip between lots of different things, so I think it would be, you know, I don't think I could take on a 7-book series like you could, PL, because that takes some serious discipline, and I would struggle with that. But writing standalones definitely excites me. And if you look at the books I read as well, a lot of them, you know, different genres and different styles. So hopefully I can. It's just hard. It's hard to get a deal with just a standalone. You know, if you're trying to go trad, isn't it? So just got to think about it, and hopefully Papa Gwynne says it's okay. And then we can take it from there.
Ed has definitely inherited the brutal gene, sadly, for readers. It's very kind of Papa Gwynne-esque in many ways, but you've definitely got your own voice. Like you're talking about, Ed's probably started 4 or 5 different manuscripts over the last 7 or 8 years. And as you said, one inspired Christian Cameron. There's another one inspired by Cormac McCarthy. But then gradually, like, you kind of picked out the bits most kind of that adapt to your own writing really well, and more inspiration than just stealing.
I think that,
and this just feels just very unique, and you can tell the historical inspiration, keeping to kind of Papa Gwynne's heart and characters as well, but in your own way.
Thanks, Will.
It's great.
I think the best thing I did was I wrote about 20 short stories and just like had lots of different ideas, lots of different voices, and just kind of experimented with writing in different styles. And then when I felt more comfortable with writing, obviously there were much shorter word counts, so I could kind of, it wasn't like I was dedicating myself to a whole book, you know. I was limited to 5,000 words per story. And then I kind of felt like I knew myself what I could do a little bit better. But yeah, the book is very much inspired by the Chosen One trope, but imagining that your daughter was the chosen one, and it's from the perspective of the father, kind of seeing what the lengths that the father will go to kind of protect his daughter, but kind of realizing the chosen one has to kind of play out how it's meant to play out, isn't it? So hopefully it's a familiar trope but a different angle.
Just like we were talking about earlier, there's always more room to explore in fantasy, and that's where taking these tropes that people adore and then showing it from a different perspective.
So I'm taking it that perhaps Ed fatherhood has had an influence and an impact on how the story's evolved. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, I started writing it before I had Iris, and you know, before me and my fiance Mercedes were together. And you know, it's about a father and his son. And then when Iris was born, I was like, you know, got to change it to a daughter. And Papa Gwynne, so Papa Gwynne's read about the first quarter, and he said, you know, what I've read so far, you definitely couldn't have written this if you hadn't been a parent already.
Yes.
So and hopefully that's a good thing. So yeah, definitely onto something there. Yeah.
It's absolutely one of those things that unless you experience it, it's hard to actually write from that perspective. Not that you can't understand or sympathize, but there are just things that you get differently when you've experienced it. So, you know, it's great to hear that you've put that into your work. And it's something that I respect greatly as someone who kind of makes a living off of judging other people's hard work. It takes a lot to be willing to put that out, you know, as someone who reviews. So I give you lots of credit for doing that. You know, it's something I always say to PL. It's just being able to put yourself out there in that way is something that I find incredible. You know, it's a different kind of bravery.
It's kind of like,
props to you.
Well,
like sending your kid off to school. We always use that analogy, right? When you put your work out there and you want everybody to like it, and you think it's going to be so popular, and you know, and then you know, if you get a bad review, you know, and it's, but the rewards, right, are just, you know, tremendous. And also you realize that in order for this to become a fully realized, fully fleshed out human being, they need to go out there in the ether and have other people, you know, help develop your child beyond just you staying at home with it. So yeah, but I have no doubt, Ed, that you're gonna be a phenomenal writer. I'm sure it's in the genes. So, and you as well, Will, whenever you decide to, I know you're quite busy right now with uni, but whenever you decide to make that move. So, but this is very exciting news to be able to think that I'm going to be able to read something by Edward John Gwynne is quite exciting. That's amazing.
John Gwynne. Yeah. Thanks, Pierre. You know, it's interesting, like you say, you know, having to put your work out there for other people to see, and you know, you need them to critique it because it's about making it better. And you know, I recently read the reviews of A Drowned Kingdom, you know, by Janny Wirtz and Mark Lawrence. You know, that must have been, it's kind of, you know, a terrifying feeling seeing, you know, those authors that you completely idolize, and you know, very much inspired by as well. You know, your writing, I've always said, feels like a mixture of Christian Cameron and Janny Wirtz. You know, you can see your influences, but it's inspired by, which is terrifying, isn't it? You know, it's scary to see that they've read it, but their thoughts also were fantastic. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I did play around with Ed when I read it. I called him up and I said, "Well, I've read it," and then there was a few seconds silence, and you could feel the fear on Ed's side of the phone, and he said, "And?" And I said, "Well," and I could see him just like, "Oh no," and I said, "It's great," and he was like, "Oh my word." Yeah. I had to play around a little bit there.
Yeah. You toyed with me.
It's not often I get the chance to, scare you.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I have to say, we've talked about the subjectivity of reading a lot, right? And through this discussion, it sounds like Will is being projected as kind of a hard ass when it comes to reviewing things. But I have heard in recent videos, you yourself have called yourself a Disney reader. So I just wanted to get a little bit of like expansion on that. What does that mean as someone who clearly isn't afraid to criticize something? What does a Disney reader mean to you?
Papa Gwynne coined the term, and he told me that I was a Disney because
Okay.
when I first read some of his manuscripts, whenever
Ruin specifically,
but whenever bad happened to my favorite characters, I would cry, and then I'd get really annoyed, and then I would say to Dad, "This is the worst book I've ever read." And I don't think you can publish this. And because I was so heartbroken with what happened to some of the characters, if you've read the last paragraph of Ruin, then I'm sure that
it ruins you.
You understand.
Yeah, it does.
And that was the kind of tipping point for me, where I didn't talk to Dad for about 2 weeks. And I simply there's been 2 times in my life when I refused to talk to Dad. Number 1 was when I finished reading Ruin. And number 2 was when he took me to the cinema to see King Kong, and I blamed him personally for what happened to King Kong, because I loved gorillas and I loved King Kong, and it was just very heartbreaking.
But I remember the specific moment of obviously Papa Gwynne. He sends us with the beta readers for feedback, constructive feedback, hopefully. And I remember the moment of Ed walking out, just tears falling from his face, and he just said, "I hate this book." And then
really what I understand now is that I loved it so much that it captured my soul.
I see.
But I mean,
so Father said this can't be a Disney book, Ed.
But I do like books that are happy, but there's not many out there, guys. I'm afraid to admit, not many fantasy books that are happy. I mean, Legends and Lattes is great, but
also the sad moments of the Faith and the Fallen make those very few happy moments so precious and make it more powerful.
I mean, I am someone who could read about the hobbits in the entire, for a 10-book series and just have them having fun, but it's not good drama. Cormac McCarthy himself said that to have good drama in a book, someone has to be living close to death. So maybe that's true.
Although Ed has not been a Disney reader with his own writing, so no, he hasn't. So he doesn't care
be warned,
inflicting the damage.
I mean,
so I do apologize. I thought that it was Will who had said that he was a Disney reader, so I apologize for communicating that. But so it sounds okay. So it does sound like to me then you guys are not quite polar opposites, but you've got a lot to bounce off of between the two of you. So do you find that when you recommend a book to each other, you're like, oh, I know this is going to hit for Ed, or I know this is going to hit for Will, because you know that you're different
it's
types
very
of
interesting.
readers?
We kind of know each other. We're different, but in a way where we often love the same stuff, but for different reasons. The classic example, both adore Joe Abercrombie's writing, but we would rank his work very differently. And so that's to talk to with each other.
Yes,
When Ed doesn't get upset by it, but
not often.
But it's really interesting to see. We absolutely love his writing and basically love all of his works. But then there's different favorite characters, different moments we would pick. And so I'd say a bit like with Papa Gwynne, we love the staples, but then the way they're executed, we prefer different things in that way. But we love the same themes probably.
Yeah, it's funny sorry, Tara, go ahead.
Okay,
No.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's funny with an author like Abercrombie because I could zero in right away on what I love about his work, i.e. the characters and the humor. But then in my mind I'm thinking, how do I love his work so much when I kind of feel like there's no plot? but I think he's an incredible writer. And I think he's probably the only writer I can say that about, that I really don't care what the plot is about. I just want to read for the characters and that snarky, sense of humor. Sorry, Taylor, that was what I wanted to get in there.
Oh no, yeah, you're totally right. I mean, the Blade itself, I absolutely adore it, and I don't care that. Even though on a reread I saw that there is kind of like things set in motion again, but there isn't a lot that comes to fruition in the Blade itself in terms of plot. But I would read it again and again and again. And then also with books like the Farseer trilogy, everyone talks about how incredible the characters are, but I don't really see people talk about the plot. But I'm rereading it at the moment, and I was just like, it's so incredible how she ties in plot to characterization that it's almost like the characters are so amazing, it overshadows the plot, and people are like, oh, there's not really much going on, it's a very slow read. And on a reread, I think I'm just appreciating the other aspects of storytelling so much.
That, well, when PL and I had the, who was going to speak there, I was actually going to say Farseer, because going back to an earlier discussion, that is a perfect example of a book that I know is incredibly well executed, but is not a favorite, if that makes sense. Like when I read the books, I know Hobbs' writing is incredible. I don't know how she can craft sentences to feel cozy. Just that the words just match perfectly. There's a craft there that I can't put my finger on. However, it is not a favorite of mine. And I don't know if it's because of that pacing, or I'm not sure what it is that I run up against with that particular, trilogy in and of itself. But I can recognize craft when I see it. So it's one of those things where I know it's beloved.
Right.
I know it's beloved. I know. I know. Maybe it just hurts too much. Maybe I'm running away from it. Maybe I'm also a Disney movie. Dead. When I'm like, no.
Taylor, I definitely agree with you, because I was on the plane the other day and I didn't have too much to do, so I wrote down my 100 favorite books, and I was like really debating where to put all of the Robin Hobb books I've read, because I can appreciate the character and I understand the writing is to a level that I would never even be able to comprehend, to understand on a deeper level. I just know that it has that emotion to it, but I just don't connect with them as much as I see other people do.
But on reflection.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of bounce off her book 3's, her ending of the trilogy. It's really hard to pin down why. Like, I really appreciate Live Ship trilogy for what it does, but it just can't go down as a favorite, and it's very sad for me, because I wish that they would, and I'm not sure whether to continue with the Realm of the Everlings or not, because I do have kind of there are flaws to it for me, and I do get upset. I'm angry at myself, because there are a lot of other people who are put them as their favorite book of all time, and I wish I could be in the club, but I'm not allowed in.
Well, but that's okay. I mean, Taylor has very much, I know she loves, for example, Brandon Sanderson. Taylor and I think, have a lot of similar tastes in books. I haven't been able to fall in love with Brandon Sanderson's writing. I haven't been able to fall in love with his books, and that hurts me, because my dear friend, who I sort of respect her taste, is like, she just loves it. I'm trying to find, like, what's the thing, I'm waiting to get that light to get, set, that the pilot light to go, and it has not, and maybe I just need to read more from him for that. But I also accept maybe it just won't happen, but that's okay, because, obviously we're different readers, different people. But yeah, I haven't, it's just,
It's like, people say, if they, a lot of people say who they love Brandon Sanderson, Way of Kings is, their favorite book. And I've read Way of Kings, and I just thought, if I didn't connect with that, I probably won't connect with the rest of the series. But I do want to try more by him. I'm thinking I'm going to try Tress of the Emerald Sea, because people say it's quite, it's a bit more lighthearted. It's quite easy to get into, to dip in and out of. So, possibly that might be the one for me. But again, I really want to love his books, because there's such, critical acclaim, and there's so many people who adore them. And I'd love to be able to talk with people and be like, I love it because of this reason. One of my friends who doesn't really read too much, he loves Brandon Sanderson. And I wish we could talk about it, but I just can't yet.
The thing is, for me, I liked Way of Kings, but I didn't love it. And almost that's a good thing, because I think it would destroy my shelves.
Yeah.
He just writes too much. Like, there would be some serious hazards of books on the floor if I fell in love with his writing too much.
I think there was a new book announced the other day, wasn't there? So, he does write a lot.
there is no stopping the man. I will say, as someone, most of my books are still on a boat making their way across the world, but I did back his Kickstarters and all of that. So even like with the things that I owned in Japan, not here yet, he does have a presence on my shelf already. And I'm like, this is a lot.
And not small.
I can't. I don't have room for all this.
Taylor, I want to kind of hear, actually, Taylor, what is it about Brandon Sanderson do you think that just does it for you?
Well, I mean, he's described himself that his writing the goal is to have a clear window, not a stained glass window. Like Jenny Wirtz or you yourself, PL, have a more like artistic way to interact with your writing, with your prose. But for him, for me, I don't know if it's purposeful all the time, but there is no barrier for me. So as soon as I start reading, I fall into the world. As soon as I start reading, I exist there and nowhere else. And I don't have to, the story and the concepts and the themes challenge me, but the writing itself doesn't challenge me. Does that make sense? So it's not something that I have to think about. I'm just in the world. And I think that kind of escapism, that ability to transport people, is what I thoroughly enjoy in his writing. So when I did my reread of the entire Stormlight Archive series, like I said, I just lived in Roshar for a month. I wasn't in this plane of existence. I was there. And I think that transportation is what I like.
Isn't it? When you find something like you're there, and it doesn't matter what else you can think about, that you'll go back to this world later on where you're happy, where you're safe. Yeah, it's a good feeling.
Yeah, that's it. That's good. I have to think. I think my problem is that for me, it's the writing that transports me. So I need the writing and the prose to speak to me on some kind of emotional level for me to feel transported into the world. So and I think maybe that's my issue. So I have to kind of maybe get past that. For me to enjoy Sanderson to that degree. So maybe that's it. So
maybe you don't need to get past it. Maybe it's not for you. That's cool. That's cool.
Interesting. Authors have different styles, isn't it? Because I love the Jade trilogy,
the Greenbone Saga.
Sorry.
Yes.
I think brilliant.
An account.
I'm currently reading Jade War, and
I still think about Jade Legacy all the time. I listened to them and read them as well. And I was talking to Mercedes the other day about how I kind of have memories of listening to the book whilst I was mucking out our horses. And every time I go to see the horses now, I think of the Greenbone Saga. And I love that. And I do think her style is very much tell instead of showing a lot of the time. It can kind of be info dumpy, but I don't mind because she makes up for it in so many other different areas. And I think there are some you do sometimes when their style is simpler, it comes across that it's far more tell instead of show. And I love as a reader to be shown something and to kind of maybe form my own opinion. I think Stephen Erickson does that really well, where he'll show something, won't explain it, won't kind of pull it out, but that's really rewarding. And it's interesting. Maybe if an author did it similar to Erickson but slightly different, I wouldn't connect to it.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes you just can't pin it down, can you?
No, and also I remember seeing something Robin Hobb said. Someone asked him about writing advice, and she said, learn the laws of literature, and then you don't have to keep to them, but then you break them for a reason. So maybe examples such as telling instead of showing is done for a reason, and understanding that in a way that I might never understand, but still know that it clicks or doesn't click is very powerful.
Yeah, I think...
Yeah,
I think no. I was just saying. I think it's there's a time and a place for both, though, right? Like one of my favorite writers, Bernard Cornwell. He tells a lot, but the way he does it and when he does it strategically just really works for me.
Yeah.
And I'm always captivated by his writing, right? And it doesn't matter. But then again, there's some authors that tell. Not necessarily more than him, but it doesn't work for me. So I think it's just, we're all individuals, our individual brains, and these synapses click and fire with different things. And it's just, some books you just connect with, and some don't. So, but my friend Taylor, she never steers me wrong. Most of her recs have certainly connected with me. Like we talked about Greenbow Saga and Dandelion Dynasty. But yet, and I thought, for example, someone like Philip, I thought Philip was gonna love Dandelion Dynasty. Nope, it's not for him, right? So we're all individuals, like I said, but I think that's the beauty of how many books, as you said, brothers, are out there, and that you don't have to like this or that. There's something else for you that you're gonna like, right? So
yeah, luckily with us, if we don't like a read that we've recommended to the other, we say, well, you better like this one instead, and then hand the next recommendation.
We threaten. Yeah, definitely.
But then because reading is so subjective, we've got a long list of books we'd love other people to read, and you understand when people don't like them, especially people like Philip. I mean, so eloquent, puts it in such a beautiful way that it's almost like even if he talks about a book he doesn't really enjoy, it still makes me want to read it. Yeah. I don't know how he does it, really. It's just incredible.
He's a special man.
He is.
His new book that was just released as well.
Yeah, brilliant writer himself. Yeah, well, Dark Disguise. I have to read that myself. So
yeah. Guys, I'd love to. We were talking earlier about the distinction between favorite books and best books. What would your favorite book in the world be, and do you think the best book you've ever read is? And are they different?
God, Ed, putting them on the spot.
I mean, I can answer the second question already and say I think they're different. But if you're putting me on the spot, I might have to say Wall of Storms from the Dandelion Dynasty is probably my favorite book. That book had me in a chokehold. It didn't matter how long it was. I was there for the ride. I remember there's a particular scene there. I was listening via audio, and I was folding laundry, and I had to get up and walk off my feelings while I was folding laundry. That is probably one of my favorite books.
Which installment is that?
Pierre Nessie's.
Which installment of the series is that?
The second one.
Yeah.
Wall of Storms. Yeah. Best second installment in a series I think I've ever read, and I can say that confidently. But I can also understand why someone might bounce off of it, because Ken Liu's writing is very distinctive. He has an overarching story, but he'll go into tangents, and if you're not into the tangent, then you're not going to be into it, right? So I understand why people don't like it. So I can see why that wouldn't be considered the best book. The best book is harder for me to really pinpoint something. Like I'm going through my shelves in my head and I'm like, oh, that's a favorite. But is it the best objectively? I'll think about that for a sec, but I'll let PL answer one of the two while I'm thinking.
Yeah, that's hard. I think favorite book for sure is To Ride Hell's Chasm by Janie Wirtz. I think that reaches me on levels that even at first I wasn't even sure I was comfortable about absorbing the levels at which it reached me, because of the main character and what he goes through and some of the elements and themes in terms of like bigotry and it just really, really, and the characters in law enforcement, it just really spoke to me. That's my favorite. Best book, I mean, on a technical level, I don't know. There's a couple. Like I said, I think I'm hard pressed to find a book. There's a couple books. A Storm of Swords is like, I just think the thing is just perfectly written. But then again, so is Ruin, right? Like there's so many, right? Toll of the Hounds by Stephen Erickson, like. I don't know. It's hard to find. It's easier to say the book that's my favorite versus the book that I think is one of the best written. Yeah. And I think, like, I know that for me, when I got to Ruin, Papa Gwynne was. I feel like he had just nailed everything, like the best elements of a story, of a fantasy story, with everything you want. Same with Excalibur by Bernard Cornwell. He just nailed it all. In one, Peril's Gate by Janie Wirtz.
Aren't they? They're just like everything came together. What would you say, Will? They were locked in.
Locked in. I was going to say, talking about the Waller Chronicles, a classic example of the best and favorite. From a technical level, I'd say Excalibur, as you said, just everything is perfect. Every storytelling element I absolutely adore it. But then I adore Enemy of God even more.
Yeah.
I'd probably say Excalibur's probably, technically slightly better written. But there's something about Enemy of God, and there's a few certain scenes that haunt me to this day.
Yes.
But so in probably the top 5 scenes I've ever read.
I mean, this is a different genre, but if I think I came to an answer, and that would be Pride and Prejudice. That is phenomenal. It happens to be a favorite at the same time, but I do think it is one of the best books I've ever read. Just no word is wasted. Everything is there for a particular purpose. So I think for me, Pride and Prejudice would have to be one of those.
Great choices. I'm sorry to hurt your feelings, guys, and put this question to you. I'm sorry.
No, it's a great question. But I have to say, and this is on something as well that Philip Chase, the wonderful producer, brought this up. It's about this series so I've only read the first book, The Darkness That Comes Before. It is absolutely brilliant on every level, like technically, but it is horrible. Like the book, I mean, it is one of the darkest, and I've read some and I love dark fantasy and fiction. It's one of the darkest, most depressing books ever, in a way, I've ever read. It's just so nihilistic, but like on a writing level, it is exceptional. Like Baker's just a brilliant writer. So I don't know if that could ever be my favorite book, but it could. Like that series might end up in my top 10 series, but. Whereas I probably need, like I said, I felt like I needed to take a shower after. It was just so.
So we were doing a read along on our Discord, where our Discord friends like to do read alongs, and we do one book a month. And in May we actually did 2, which was The Devils, and then we did Dead House Gates, which was great reading it alongside other people. And then our one for June was The Darkness That Comes Before, and we just couldn't dive into it because. Going back to back with Dead House Gates and then and that book, it would have been probably too much. And
I had exams, and I was like, let's wait for the right time.
I read it years ago, and I was like, I don't know if you can hear the car there. That was very loud.
Right.
I read it years ago and just thought the themes that he explores is just absolutely just bonkers. But
it's probably a book that you actually talk to me more than most.
Yeah,
that it just always crops out in conversation for you.
Yeah.
But you can't bear to reread it yet.
Yeah. No, it's scary. Good choices though, guys. Sorry.
That's okay. But I am really looking forward to watching your video about that, because I do think that's a really interesting mental exercise for us to even do as readers, because you have to know yourself to be able to identify what differentiates those two. Like, I love this, but objectively it's not good. Right. So when I was doing my across the world move, I didn't have any brain capacity for thinking through intricate fantasy worlds. So I just read through the Shadowhunter series. That was so fun.
Yeah.
Would I say it's a good book? Absolutely not. But did I have a fantastic time? Yes. It was so the drama and the mess. I was very much into it in that moment. Right. So speaking of what you're going through in your life can make something a favorite, even though objectively you're like, I don't really recommend it, but if you want mess, have fun.
Yeah. Sometimes Sadie is reading a book and she's like, this is terrible, but I love it.
Yes.
You have films like that as well, don't you? Like kind of a guilty pleasure, but in another way. But that's important for you as well, definitely.
I think so. Yeah. I'm just coming out of that phase.
Another question for you both. If you could recommend one book each for us to read, what would you choose?
I love that you're putting us on the spot because we're getting a taste of our own medicine.
These questions first, so we're throwing it up to you.
Yeah.
I mean, you said that you've already read Ring Shout, right? You've done that. Okay. If you want to do more P. Jelly Clark, I think that Tramcar 00015 is a short story. It's going to be like a one-shot. You sit down and you read it, and it is alternative history, but it has his – what's the word I'm looking for? It has his finesse where you discover things by yourself as it goes through, and you see what changed in the timeline. So I would say that would be my recommendation, Tramcar 015. And I think it's available for free out there too.
That's a great rec. It's hard because I think brothers, we've read a lot of the same books. So I'm looking at my favorites. It's hard to think of a book that you probably haven't read. I think I might actually go indie with this, and I'll go. It's tough between these two. I want to cheat here.
We'll allow it.
But I think knowing you two, as far as I do, I'm gonna have to go with Gunmetal Gods.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, I've seen a lot of great stuff about that.
I'm gonna have to go with Gunmetal Gods because it is dark. But it is also beautiful, and the writing is beautiful. But it's the prose isn't too heavy. It's lush. It's great, but it's not. I think you and there's that historical base. Very much grounded in and inspired by historical events, and Middle Eastern fantasy. I absolutely love it. You know, like with that Middle Eastern feel. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Gunmetal Gods.
That's a fantastic record. Yeah. And the first one has an undertone of cosmic horror, and then if you like that, he goes all in later. So
So he kind of guides you in, and then when you're hurt, he hits you.
Listen, Book 3 gave me nightmares. I messaged him. I was like, "Sir, this needs to come with a content warning. What is this?" So yeah, fantastic rec PL. I agree.
Thanks. Yeah, Zamil Akhtar is a brilliant writer, and his series it's beautiful. It's dark, as Taylor highlighted the cosmic horror element. You have the Janissaries, like I said, the historical element, especially with the warfare. Yeah, I think that sounds like something I think you guys would like.
Well, when we've read those recs, we can come back to you. Definitely.
Oh, please do. Yeah. Well, before we take too much of your time and you leave, I'd love to turn the question to you. Is there something that you think we should branch out and read? I mean, PL is very much on the same wavelength when it comes to historical fantasy and fiction as you, but like, do you have something based on what you know about our reading taste? What you think about?
My go-to rec at the moment is: have you read Glorious Exploits?
Never heard of it.
Okay, but that's quite a short read. It's historical fiction. The premise sounds a bit strange, and it doesn't sound as great as the actual story is.
The delivery is great.
Do you want to give the premise, Ed?
It is in the time when Athens has invaded Syracuse, which is Sicily, and they were beaten back, and so the Syracusans captured a load of Athenian soldiers, and they put them in a quarry, and they just left them chained. And there are two Syracusan potters who have just lost their job, and they are obsessed with the Athenian playwright Euripides, and they have this dream that they are going to host a play in the quarry, and who better to be the cast in a Euripides play than the Athenian soldiers who have been captured. It's about them, feeding them, looking after them, rehearsing with them. It's just such a crazy concept. Bear in mind, it's like the 5th century BCE.
Yeah.
And then it's all about them putting on this play, and what happens then. It's just
the characterization,
very evocative, isn't it? Yeah. Really powerful book.
The characterization is almost unparalleled. The search for identity. These characters who haven't achieved what they wanted. And they're kind of reflecting on that in a pivotal moment in their lives. I think it's a book about humanity, emotions that really kind of, I think, will strike a chord in anyone who picks it up. And it's quite short as well, so we're not going to recommend a 13-book series for you.
I don't have to read 3,000 pages before it gets
good. Yeah, exactly. Before it gets good.
Nice choice, Will. I would have to choose actually the last book I read. Which is just, I have to recommend it to everyone, which is Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones.
Okay.
And so it's a historical horror, really, but it's not too much. But it's a Lutheran priest, and it's about a lot of things that happen in his life. I won't give too many spoilers because there's lots of twists and turns along the way. But I would say for someone who loves reading, that this is a book for you because it just truly captures you. The prose is just so good. He's someone who really thinks about his craft, and there's a lot of telling, and there's also a lot of showing. I think it's got a really good balance for what we want.
And Pierre Frisoni loves the chronicler's tale, the classic Bernard Cornwell, an older man telling a story. Got that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I just added both those to my TBR, so
Nice.
there you go. Wow,
Yeah.
I'm excited about those two.
I would love to give Jones another try.
Carry on.
Oh, I was just saying I would love to give Jones another try because I read The Only Good Indians. And that ended up being, in the end, about a 3-star for me. But the imagery has never left my brain. And so this is where I know something in that resonated with me, and I'd like to try him again. And then after I read My Heart is a Chainsaw by him, but I'm not a slasher girly. So that just, I think that was a subject issue. So I was kind of going between his new book, The Buffalo Hunter, or Mapping the Interior. But I think you just sealed the deal. I'll give his new one a try. I feel like it'll resonate.
Yeah, I really want to read the Only Good Indian. Is it? Called?
Yeah, The Only Good Indians.
But there's a lot of his other books that I just know I wouldn't connect to because I don't really like horror, and this book doesn't feel like like a classic slasher or like one of those horror. It feels a bit more Stephen King.
Yeah. Now,
something around.
Now I was gonna cheat and say recommend 2 books. I did, but it's actually funny because the author of the other book that I said I was gonna recommend, Crystal Matar, just showed up in the chat. So her book, Legacy of the Brightwash, first book, Tainted Dominion, would have been that other wreck that I would have said if it was one book that you, other than Gunmetal Gods, and I think like that book is sublime.
Yeah.
Taylor's read it as well. Taylor can comment to how good that book is.
It emotionally devastated me. I just.
Yeah.
I'm still recovering. All right. I've read book 2 and I'm still recovering from what's been done to me. So in the best way. But yeah, it is an absolutely phenomenal book. I mean, I scream about it all the time. I remember when I was talking to Patrick Leo, I was like screaming at him to read it, and he finally did. And I was like, my mission in life is now complete, that I've made someone else read this book. So
yeah. How do you guys plan like your TBR? Because obviously being on BookTube, you're seeing other people talk about, and you just add everything to your TBR, don't you? But how do you plan it out? Are you mood readers? Do you plan it out year by year or month by month? And also if you two talk to each other, you then like, okay, I've got to fit another book in now because that sounded really exciting. So yeah, tell us more.
I mean, talking together is dangerous. So also, I'll just put that out there. Also, these page showing episodes are also dangerous because we talk to so many like-minded people that give great recs, like Exhibit A, the 2 of you. But I would say my TBR building has changed drastically in the last 2 years. I know we've mentioned parenthood as a factor in our lives and in our reading several times during this episode, but I have to bring it up again because after becoming a mom, before becoming a mom, I was very, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to read. And I was very strict about it. And I was very good at finishing my TBRs. Now I'm mood reading the most I think I ever have in my life. And I'm trying to embrace the chaos. So instead of doing a monthly TBR, I've shifted to seasonal TBRs because that gives me that wiggle room. I have 5 books I'm definitely going to read throughout summer, but the rest of them I can just pick. And I've been pleasantly surprised. A lot of people have liked that they don't know what I'm reading. And then when I do a wrap up, they're like, oh, I didn't know you read that book. So I do think it's working well, but it has changed drastically. I'm just a chaos gremlin now with what I pick. No one knows.
It's exciting though, being a mood reader. And, it's kind of scary planning something too much in advance. This year, I actually planned my TBR for the whole year.
Crazy.
And I don't know why I did it, but I have almost stuck to it. It's probably about 95% of the books.
That's incredible.
The last couple of weeks, I've been a bit more of a mood reader. But it's like the Count of Monte Cristo I read in June, and it's a book that I've wanted to read forever. And I don't think if I was a mood reader, I would ever just pick it up. I think it's something I've got to really think, okay, I'm going to pick up this 1,300-page book. I'm going to plan this. It's going to be in June. I'm going to build myself up to it. So I think there are pros and cons to both, aren't there? But being a mood reader is chaos. Yeah.
It is. It's fun chaos, though.
Yeah.
But I know
Beautiful
PL's the opposite.
I wish I could be more of a mood reader. I wish I wasn't such a planner. I wish I'm obsessively married to my TBR. I'm a completionist. Like, I can't move forward until I read certain books. Like this year was very much a concentration on, okay, I have over 30 books on my shelves that I haven't read.
Yeah.
Why am I, I'm going and buying more books and not reading those 30? No, I need to focus on obviously there was something that drew me to these books in the first place. I spent all this money. I should really go out and I put myself on somewhat of a book buying budget. Well, I think my wife does that more than me. It's like, okay, well, have you read these books yet? You bought all these books. Now you're gonna buy these ones. So and that's really paid off, because I think what that's done for me is it's made me appreciate what I have in terms of the breadth of books I have. I still keep adding to TBR, as Taylor said, and I think the TBR is infinite. I've accepted that, but now I'm very systematic in how I do it. And also, too, I know that when I'm in the midst of like the heaviest part of my writing, because I write a book a year, I find that my reading really has to slow down, and that's where I am now. I'm in the real meat of writing my book 6. So it's cool that I can do things like the reread of Warlord Chronicles I'm doing with Philip, right? So I'll diverge onto something like that. But I do have a TBR. I tend to stick to it, and I'm happy about it. I wish I could be more of a mood reader. I'd probably, I'm not saying I'm not happy not being a mood reader, because I am. Like I said, I'm somewhat a completionist, but I kind of make a TBR for essentially a year, and I try and stick to that as closely as possible. There'll be a few, paths that I stray onto, but for the most part, I read what I plan.
Yeah. Nice, love it.
Yeah, I mean, that's why when I'm so incredibly blessed to have people reach out and be like, do you want to ARC? Do you want to read this? I would offer this to you. And I'm like, you just got to realize I would love to, but I can't promise. Like, PL is incredible at following a timeline. I'm just not anymore. And I have to accept that about myself, that it's just, I love being a mood reader, but it does affect, how you can project going forward, like what you're going to do. So do you guys find that BookTube has changed your reading? Has parenthood changed your reading, or being in university again?
Definitely BookTube, I think. University is quite counterproductive in the sense of, you think, people love reading or go English and history, you'll read more, won't you?
Yeah.
Definitely not. But I think it means I cherish kind of my holidays a lot more, where I can pick up the books that are on my list for so long. And it also means I'm probably starting less series, because I'm thinking about the ones I've already started much more. And so I finished uni last week, and I've dived straight into the Dreambone Saga, Jade War Book 2, because I read Jade City at the end of last year. And so I've waited patiently, and now's the time. And BookTube has definitely meant I've picked up more book ones of a series, because you get carried along the wave of just the excitement of a new release. And obviously, we know how important it is to support an author when a book comes out as well. And that discussion at the beginning. And so I'd love to be a part of that. But now I'm going to dedicate myself to actually finish a few series I've started. Songs of Chaos by Michael Miller and the Dreambone Saga by...
That's good, Will. Yeah, I mean, I think being a parent, at first, I was like, I just can't read ever again. I just want to look at Iris, and it's funny, because you think you'd have kind of less reading time, maybe. And I think there are periods in my life that I do definitely have less reading time. But I think since being a parent, we've kind of made more of a conscious effort to, you be together as a family. And sometimes you can just kind of sit there and read a chapter when, Iris is doing something and that kind of thing. So I think there's more of a balance now, whereas before I'd probably read, like 10 books in a month, and then the next month I'd read nothing, But I think now I probably read more consistently, because I kind of just, I have to also for insanity. So
Yes,
but
which
is a good thing as well. So because it is a hobby, and I've got more time to, be around. So I think that's definitely changed it as well. And BookTube, it definitely inspires you to read more and dive into more book ones, or that kind of thing. So I'll kind of plan the TBR. This year's the first time I've done it, but I'll plan it for the year, and then I've kind of left a couple of gaps for each month. And then I've written down all of the books. Like if I see a good review, or one of my hobbies is just trawling through Goodreads and reading about books and reading reviews by people that I know. So then I'll see something and I'll add it to my could be a mood read pile. So it's a balance.
Yeah. BookTube is dangerous. I add something every day. It's just in the best way. In the best way.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, listen, I know we've been, we could keep you here talking forever, guys, because we so love talking to you. We want to be respectful of your time, though. This has been such a phenomenal conversation. I also want to say, congratulations, because your channel has just continued to grow and evolve. Of course, I know Will has his own channel, that channel which shall not be named, but together as your brother Gwynne, you're well over 12,000 subscribers, and that's a huge testament to how popular you are. So kudos and congratulations. You're getting close to the 13 now, actually, 13K. So you must feel really, really proud about that, and so well deserved. So, but I know, congratulations.
That's the main reason we're on BookTube is for chats like this, and this is like the heart and core of it, which we absolutely adore. We want to talk to people who love books, love the books that we love, and give us recommendations. And we've absolutely loved this chat. It's like sometimes you don't remember like your TBR video, or you don't really remember, when you look back on hindsight, you don't remember the TBR haul or that kind of stuff. But I remember very fondly our chat. Not last year, a couple of years ago. And that you have like highlights along the way, don't you? And chatting with people is just the best. Being able to geek out about books with other people, it's wonderful. Yeah. Another one of those moments. So thank you for having us on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, of course, truly the honor is ours. I mean, just reiterating what you said, having been gone from the community during the move, coming back, it is those connections and those highlights, that interpersonal communication that makes this community. It's why we're here. It truly is. Yeah. Books are great, but this connection here, this is why we're here.
Exactly.
Is wonderful, but can also be a bit lonely in the way of you're on your own, especially if you don't have people. I'm very lucky to have Ed, Papa Gwynne, who love reading, but a lot of people, their family or closest friends don't read, and so it's amazing to have these chats online to connect to other people in the comments on the Discord. And when they say that they picked a book up that you've recommended, it's a huge honor. And it's just amazing to talk to fellow book lovers and geek out with an author who's written Othran. Such crazy characters. Yeah.
Othran is the problematic. He's. I love him, but he's got work to do.
He's such. Yeah, definitely love it. No.
Well, we do want to give you an opportunity, brothers Gwynne, as we're winding down, to let everybody know. I mean, though you've been living under a rock. Where can we find you in space? Your BookTube channel, yours, Will, Discord, Patreon, all those wonderful things, social media handles, Twitter, Instagram. Where can we find the Brothers Gwynne?
Well, we are the Brothers Gwynne. We've got a YouTube, we've got a TikTok, which we're not very of the young generation, really. We're not great at it, but we love to share thoughts in there as well, and Instagram as well. Yeah. We run Papa Gwynne's merchandise. You guys want to, anyone likes to wear any jump, have all written on, then feel free to go to Papa Gwynne's website, and you should see it over there that we do. But yeah, we have a Discord channel as well where we talk with a really great community. I think we have almost 700 people in there now, and it's a really good, really great size because you get to know people really well. And you plan. There's lots of buddy reads going on as well, and sometimes we don't join in with all of them, but other people don't need us to join in. They just make plenty of friends on the server, and so there's lots of places to hang out and chat and all sorts and geek out about books.
And for those watching the replay, we will have those down in the description down below.
Thank you very much, guys.
Awesome. Taylor, you want to talk about where to find you in the space, etc.? And
Sure. Where am I in the space? Well, I'm coming back into it after a little bit of an unplanned hiatus, but here we are. So my channel is Made Between the Pages. I don't know if you're watching this on PL's channel or mine, but you can find me here on Page Twoing. It's one of my favorite things that I do in this space. I guess what else do I do? You can find me at Before We Go blog. I do reviews, and I'm also part of Spiffbo, self-published fantasy blog off. So you can find some of my reviews associated with that.
Yeah.
Outside of that, though, I make all different kinds of content. Book reviews. Even though they're not as popular, I still love doing them, as you guys mentioned earlier. I do vlogs. That's kind of like my bread and butter. So would love to see you guys over on the channel. But that's mainly where I sit. Any of my other social media will be in the links down below. No longer on Twitter, but outside of that, I'm pretty much on all of them. So
Taylor's vlogs, everything's just amazing, but her vlogs are chef's kiss. Amazing. Love watching her vlogs.
I love making them.
I'll quickly PL Stewart. Everything in social media is at PL Stewart, right? Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook. For reviews, like Taylor, I'm an assistant editor of Before We Go blog. Shout out to Before We Go blog crew, led by the wonderful Beth Tabler and everybody there. You can find my reviews there on a Goodreads. The books, website, peelstart.com. The Drown King Saga is a series, 5 books out now. Pack of Wolves, the 5th one just came out. And the 6th one, A Black Dragon on Red, is the one I'm currently working on. That's expected in the spring of 2026. Hopefully they finish up the series in 2027. So very honored that the brothers Gwynne have chosen to put my first book up there in the background. I'm humbled, and I know Ed has read it. I think it's on Will's TBR. So
for this summer, I'm free from uni. I can pick up the books I've been wanting to for a while.
Yeah.
But thanks so much for all you've done to, highlight my book. So I really appreciate it. But we have to have you guys back again sooner, not 2 years later.
Yes.
Well, you guys our channel as well at some point, guys.
Yeah.
We'd absolutely love that.
We'd be delighted.
Oh, we would love to. We'd absolutely love to. Oh my gosh, that'd be amazing. Please give all your best to your lovely family. And again, congratulations on all success. Will on uni, Ed on parenthood, etc. Please give our regards to Papa Gwynne. Of course, he's welcome anytime to join you guys. He is wonderful. He's one of our favorite authors, as you can see from behind. We love his work, and we're really looking forward to seeing work from Edward Gwynne in the future. Maybe that'll become one of my new favorite authors. So
high hopes. That pitch was awesome.
Listen, also want to thank everybody who came by, joined us live. Apologies we didn't get to all the comments. We're so into the conversation. It was amazing. And everyone who's going to watch this on replay, you're what makes this kind of long form content amazing. Oh, the great Jackson Dickert always is stream ending.
I'm sorry, Jackson. Yeah, we're heading out, but there's 2 hours for you to watch. So
yeah, amazing. But we will see you again next time on Page Twoing. And once again, thank you to the fabulous brothers Gwynne. We're so honored for joining us today.
Pleasure, guys.
Really, thank you.
Courage.
Take care. Bye now.